The Sunday afternoon was crisp in the gated suburb of West Hill Estate. The mansion sparkled outside, but inside, the silence between Charles and Evelyn could cut glass. Charles stood in the living room, scrolling on his phone, ignoring the soft clatter from the kitchen where Evelyn, in her wheelchair, was struggling to reach a pot on the stove. "Charles, could you help me lift this?" she called. He didn't look up. "Why are you always cooking?" "We have a chef." "I enjoy it. I want to feel useful," she said gently. He snorted. "If you really want to be useful, Evelyn, try walking." She froze. Her hand trembled on the pot handle. "I didn't mean it that way," he added dryly, eyes still on his phone. "You never do," she whispered, wheeling herself out of the kitchen, biting her lips to trap her sadness. At night, Charles barely looked at her. He slept facing the other side, and when she reached out, he flinched. "Please, Charles," she murmured one night. "Talk to me. Love me, even if just a little. It was never my wish to become paralyzed." His voice was ice. "I didn't sign up for this. I married a woman, not a patient." She slept with her eyes wet from tears, curled in the cold embrace of loneliness. Few days after that, while Charles sat in the balcony, his mind lost in endless thought. "I can't go to the anniversary gala with this cripple," he muttered to himself. Just then, Evelyn wheeled herself into the balcony. "My dress for the event is ready. I want to try it on. Will you want to come and see?" Charles was silent. "Babe, is there anything the matter? You know you can always talk to me," Evelyn said. Charles turned his head. His face frowned. "You are my problem," he said coldly and walked away. That night, Evelyn laid on the bed thinking. Trying to figure out what she did to offend Charles but couldn't figure out anything. Charles woke up the next morning earlier than usual. Dressed up quickly and left to the venue without Evelyn. "I will see how you will get to the party," he muttered, closing the door gently behind him. At the Lagos Oriental Hotel, the chandeliers sparkled like stars and the room buzzed with high society, politicians, business moguls and celebrities. Charles, CEO of Danco Holdings, was the center of attention. Handsome, tall, and dressed in a tuxedo that looked custom-made in Italy. He had everything, or so it seemed. Few moments later, Evelyn, his wife, wheeled herself in quietly. Her elegant gown flowing over her wheelchair. Her smile was gentle. Her eyes alert, and her presence, though subdued, was graceful. Charles saw her but avoided her like ghost. "What is a crippled woman doing at a party?" some of the guests mocked. The party continued for a while. Charles tried to keep his distance from Evelyn, chatting with other women to prevent her from coming closer, but his plan couldn't hold for long. The woman's attention soon drifted away, and when he was left standing alone, Evelyn drew closer to him. Then he frowned. "How did you get here?" Evelyn blinked. "You didn't want me to come." "You'll embarrass me. The media is everywhere." Tears rushed to her eyes. "I'm your wife, Charles." "Not tonight," he said coldly. Other dignitaries began trooping in. One of them, Mr. Carl, CEO of Carl's Corporation, caught sight of Evelyn. She smiled politely. "Is this your wife?" he asked. Charles fidgeted. "Oh, she's just, a friend of the company." Evelyn's face froze. Her hand, resting gently on her lap. She said nothing, her throat clamped by silent pain. "Leave now before any other person sees you with me," Charles whispered into her ears, after the man left. "But it's raining," she replied. "You are not salt, you are not going to dissolve," he said bluntly. Without allowing Evelyn to say any other word, he walked away. Later that night,
in their mansion at Western Hills. She confronted him.
Charles, a friend of your company. After all we've been through. I became like this while on the business errands. She said with a cracked voice. Charles sighed, not looking at her. Evelyn, you don't understand. These people won't respect me if they know. Because I'm in a wheelchair. He snapped. Because you don't fit into the picture anymore. He replied coldly, adjusting his Rolex. I need a certain image. He said, throwing off his tie. You're dead weight. Weeks passed. Charles grew more distant. He stopped coming home. Stopped talking. One rainy evening, as Evelyn sat by the window staring into the storm, Charles returned. Briefcase in hand. I want a divorce, he said flatly after the evening meal. Tossing a divorce paper on her lap. You can take whatever settlement you want. But I can't do this anymore.
Evelyn looked at him for a long time. Her voice was calm. But her soul was bleeding. You're divorcing me because of my legs, Charles. Not because I did anything wrong. He didn't respond. But where do I go? You know I am an orphan. No family, no relative anywhere. Evelyn said, almost weeping. Anywhere that's not here. You might as well return to the orphanage where you came from. He said coldly. Ignoring her tears. She stared at him. Heart cracking. One day, you'll look for me. He laughed. You. Please. She turned her chair away, letting her silence speak her heartbreak. Evelyn left with nothing but a duffel bag and her dignity the following morning. She struggled through the streets for 2 days. On the second day, Evelyn was still combing the streets on that rainy day. Drenched, exhausted. On the road, her wheelchair hit a pothole and tilted. She fell sideways. Her snacks falling to the ground. A gentleman about 35. Handsome and well-dressed ran over. Ah. Madam. Sorry, let me help. He lifted her gently. Righted the wheelchair, and helped her sit. Are you okay? Thank you, she muttered. Shivering. Ma'am, what are you doing on the road? Where is your husband? The gentleman asked. Evelyn blinked. Searching his face. I'm Ethan Wilson, CEO of Ethwells Corporation. He said. I can't remember meeting you before, how did you know me? Evelyn asked. Let's leave the rain first. I can help you home, ma'am, my dear, I no longer have a home. She said with a teary eye. Come live with me if you don't mind. But you don't know me. Evelyn said. I have known you enough, he said softly. Please, come with me. Ethan housed her in his well-furnished home in the suburbs. At first, Evelyn insisted on helping with chores. I didn't bring you here to be my servant. Ethan said, looking into her eyes, but Evelyn insisted. I just love doing it, she replied softly. Despite her wheelchair, she managed the home with such grace that is unexplainable. Ethan came home one day to the aroma of jollof and grilled chicken. You cooked this? He asked. Is it terrible? He grinned. It's better than any restaurant. One evening, Ethan saw Evelyn working on his scattered business files. Are you budgeting my company's accounts? He asked. Stunned. You were leaking money through a supply chain loophole. I highlighted it here. She said. Wait, how do you know all this within a day? This data has passed through the hands of all my key staff, but no one told me this. I ran logistics and business strategy for my ex-husband until he threw me out. Ethan stared at her. Come work for me. No, run the company. What? I'm serious. I've seen executives with legs and suits who don't have half your brain. But why are you doing all this? Why did you trust me this much? She asked. Look at my face very well. You still don't remember me? Ethan asked. No. Evelyn shook her head. Do you remember the dirty gentleman who came to your ex-husband's company searching for job? You and your husband were heading out in your car when he reached the gate. He didn't give the gentleman a chance to submit his CV because of his worn-out dress. You tried to convince him to give the gentleman a chance, but he declined. The gentleman turned to leave and you saw that even the trousers were slightly torn. Then you got out of the car and gave him a check. It's me, ma'am. What? I can't believe this. How did you become like this so shortly? Evelyn asked curiously.
Ethan looked at her and smiled. I used the money you gave me to rent a small shop at the nearby market. And part to register it as a company even though it was just a small shop. That is Ethwell's corporation today. So I am like this today all thanks to you. Ethan remarked, holding her hands. Evelyn accepted the offer and ran the Ethwell's corporation independently. She implemented a structured system. Created partnerships. Launched new services and a subsidiary, Eve Technologies. Profits tripled in 8 months. Investors lined up. Ethan watched her from afar and saw more than brilliance. He saw beauty, deep, true beauty. One evening, on the balcony of their new office, he knelt before her. I love you. You taught me that strength doesn't walk, it speaks. It builds. It survives. You are everything a man needs in a woman. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes. Yes. For once. Evelyn felt truly loved. She had been broken. Abandoned and belittled. But from the ruins, she rose, stronger, wiser, and loved beyond measure. Meanwhile, Charles's empire was collapsing. It began with one of his partners cooking the books and fleeing the country. Then a tax scandal, he was arrested and got bailed out with a huge sum. Later, the company went bankrupt. Then a longtime supplier also sued for breach of contract, claiming Evelyn had signed fair deals that Charles later altered. Next came the fire that gutted his warehouse. Insurance refused to pay out due to a misclause Evelyn used to handle. The bank froze his assets. His house and cars were auctioned off. His phone went from 300 contacts to silence. He wore the same suit for weeks. Now living in a rented 2-room flat, he heard whispers of a new company dominating the market. Eve Technologies. Desperate, he wore his worn-out suit and showed up at the Eve Technologies headquarters. When the receptionist told Evelyn he was there, she stared for a long moment and said, "Send him in." He stepped in, thinner, older, humbler. "Evelyn!" he exclaimed with shock on his face, his stomach twisted. Evelyn was calm. Poised in an armchair behind a glass desk. Her wheelchair by her side and sunlight behind her like a halo. "I came to ask for help," he said. "Either a loan, partnership or anything. I've lost everything." She looked him over as if seeing through his soul. "You said I was dead weight. That, I would embarrass you." He bowed his head. His face covered with shame. "I was wrong. Please. You were the strength behind my company. You were my everything. And I threw you away." Tears gathered in his eyes. She stared. Then sighed. "I will approve a partnership. Not because you deserve it. But because I'm not the monster you were." He nodded. Unable to speak. "But this time," she added, "you need to work hard. No shortcuts, and you answer to my husband directly." "Thank you," Charles said shyly. Evelyn nodded. "You can leave now." My husband will give you a call tomorrow. Charles turned slowly, walking out, humbled and stripped of ego. Evelyn married Ethan 3 months later in a garden wedding. The wheelchair didn't matter to him. He was all over her. To him, Evelyn was the most beautiful woman on earth. She started a foundation for women with disabilities. Her story went viral. Charles watched and envied her success from afar. Once, he had a queen. Now he carried the weight of his choices. And Evelyn. She smiled every morning, not because her legs worked, but because her heart finally was free.
I hope you learned something from this story. If you do, please give this video a thumbs up and share. Please subscribe so you will be the first to be notified when we upload a new inspiring story. Thanks for watching. Bye.